Jnana ज्योतिरज्योति उज्ज्वलरुधिकन्दर ज्योतिरज्योति उज्ज्वलरुधिकन्दर तुमितमभञ्जनः प्रभु तुमितमभञ्जनः रंग रंग भंगवा जे अंग संगम रंग रंग भंगवा जे अंग संगम गायचे छंद भगत वृंद आरती तुम्हार गायचे छंद भगत वृंद आरती तुम्हार जय जय आरती तुम्हार हर हर आरती तुम्हार शिव शिव आरती तुम्हार गुरु महाराज जी की जय। तुम चलो गुणजीत गुणेभ्यः नक्तं दिवं सकरुणं तव पाकारी गच्छं त्यलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदमे न च भान्ति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ते तरसा त्वयि तृप्ततृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि रामकृष्णे मर्त्यामृतं तव पदं मरणोन्मीनाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी स्नान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेकगम्य तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो। ॐ स्थापकाय च च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्म स्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमः श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमः श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमः श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। सर्वमंगल मांगल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। सृष्टि स्थिति विनाशानां शक्ति भूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणी नमोस्तुते। शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्यार्ति हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय 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 महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय।
Oh, asik asik sih, asik juga. Oh,
Hello, check. Hello. Hello, check. Hello, check. Namah Shri Atirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchit Sukhasvarupaya Swami Tapaharine. So, last time, in this lecture of Vivekananda called Maya and Freedom, we were discussing this one rather extreme, strong case, and it's something that bears repetition first because there's a good chance of this being misinterpreted. In fact, somebody had actually asked some questions on this, which suggested that this particular paragraph by Vivekananda is really susceptible to misinterpretation. So let us read this paragraph one more time and try to understand it in what I suppose is the correct interpretation, because there are ways by which this can be misinterpreted. There are several ways by which this can be misinterpreted. So here is the paragraph. Let me read it out one more time from last time. There was never a mother who did not think her child was a born genius, the most extraordinary child that was ever born. She dotes upon her child. Her whole soul is in the child. The child grows up, perhaps becomes a drunkard, a brute, ill-treats the mother. And the more he ill-treats her, the more her love increases. The world lauds it as the unselfish love of the mother, little dreaming that the mother is a born slave. She cannot help it. She would a thousand times rather throw off the burden, but she cannot. So she covers it with a mass of flowers, which she calls wonderful love. And this is Maya. Here, we had discussed this particular paragraph, but as I said, it's something that bears repetition, because most of the time, it's a fact that we usually associate love with as a spiritual quality, but it is easy, all too easy, to interpret attachment as love. And I had said last time, what is it that distinguishes between the two is precisely this notion of freedom, which had been discussed in the previous paragraph. Recall the title of this particular talk. It's called Maya and Freedom, where freedom is one antipode, and the conflation or confusion of something which is based on attachment and something which is based on freedom, the confusion between these two, a mixture of these two, is exactly what is called Maya. And when it moves more towards the side of attachment, then its effects become more clear. And here, therefore, Vivekananda picks up an extreme example, an example which we in normal day-to-day life are apt to regard as a manifestation of the most unselfish form of love, namely a mother's love for her child. And then he starts analyzing that and raises a particular event or particular set of circumstances where he says that suppose you have the child misbehaving, ill-treating, when once it grows up, starts ill-treating, misbehaving with its mother, but the mother is habituated to behaving in a particular way towards the child, which is now a grown person. And the greater the ill treatment, the more there is this overflow of emotion. And the world calls it unselfish, the mother's great unselfish love, little realizing that this is not love at all. It is just a form of attachment, and the mother cannot help it. See, this is an extreme example. An extreme example. And how do we distinguish between this kind of attachment and what is a true form of love? love in itself has to have a certain universal quality to it, where it's a subjective quality, a quality of being of consciousness, not dependent on the object of this particular aspect of our consciousness, not dependent on this particular object of our consciousness. When it becomes dependent, specifically directed to one object, in this particular case, the individual child or the son, and not towards others, then there is this preferential flow of this exalted feeling we call love. The more the emotional content, and I use the words emotional content fairly carefully, the more it is going to be directed to the particular and not to the universal. If it is something that comes unasked for, if it is something without any conditions, then the person in question will not feel any pain, any hurt because of this particular condition of one's consciousness called love. On the other hand, if it is conditioned by a much more superficial aspect of our being, namely emotions, next door to a physical sentiment, then attachment becomes automatic. The more the nerves come into, the physical nerves come into play, the physical system comes into play, the rising of emotions come into play, the more the more this aspect of consciousness which we call love gets mixed with the body idea, the more it becomes attachment. Again, here he is differentiating between these two poles of our existence. The physical body idea and the idea of consciousness, unconditioned. The more one moves towards the body, the physical, the emotional, the emotions are sort of just a level higher than the body, the more is the attachment content of our consciousness. The more it moves away from that, the more is the love aspect. The real, what we truly call love, that aspect becomes more and more developed. So, I had said last time that the test of whether it is love or attachment is the freedom to throw something away. In other words, here, the crucial thing that is to be dealt with is the object. If the object is particular, specific, and it causes trauma, it causes anxiety, it causes pain, then what has happened is that this love has not been given unconditionally. Something which is given conditionally is merely a transaction. It's I give you this, you give me that, except that it's in terms of some kind of a biological conditioning. Nothing more. Nothing particularly exalted about that. But it's only when the free conscious aspect of our being starts acting more and more through the body that what we call love really comes into play. In other words, the capacity to detach at a moment's notice is what is the characteristic of freedom. And love is through freedom, not through the opposite of that, which is attachment. So if we claim that there is something we love and it's giving us pain, then rest assured we are merely fooling ourselves. It means what is required is deeper introspection to cut away and analyze our feelings and see as a product of that analysis how much of what we are calling love is actually free and how much of it comes from a personal attachment. It is here that the analysis is to be directed. This is what is called Viveka. This is what is called discrimination. And the symptom of attachment, moha, as Shankara calls it, and defines it as a Viveka, the symptom of that is the feeling of pain, a feeling of rejection. Yeah? If something was given freely, without expectation, then whether it bears a particular fruit or not is not something we'll bother our heads with, is not something we'll get emotionally invested in. This pain of rejection comes from precisely a certain specific expectation. It is this expectation in return that binds us, not the giving per se. The giving of that emotion, or the giving of that love cannot possibly condition a person. What conditions is, I give you this and expect something else in return. Maybe your subservience, maybe the expectation that you will also give me something in return. It is precisely this expectation, yeah, that is a symptom of attachment, not love. This capacity to throw that attachment away at a moment's notice is exactly what real love is about. And then it becomes a condition of one's consciousness itself. It's essentially the same as one's existence. It is the same as consciousness or knowledge. Why? Because it is free. It's given freely with no conditions imposed. Well, these are abstract realities, if we try to analyze them intellectually. Unless we see some concrete manifestations of what exactly we mean by this kind of unselfish love in the lives of certain individuals, we will not be able to understand the difference between what we call love and what we call attachment. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, in one particular place, he distinguishes between these two qualities. He calls something Sharbobhute Bhalobasha, love for all beings. That he calls Daya. And love for only one's own, he calls Maya. Love for all religions, people of all religions, all faiths, calls Daya. Towards only one's own, calls Maya. Love for all people over all countries, calls it Daya. Only for people of one's own country, calls Maya again. It's the same conclusion that is being emphasized here. It's from the particular that one abstracts out this aspect of our consciousness and universalizes it. This is the transition from this confusion called Maya to the clarity called freedom. Again, in another, so this was again words given in fairly simple language by Sri Ramakrishna. In Mother Sarada's life, we see the same thing. At some point, she says, there was this dacoit who used to come and visit her called Amjad, who had to go to jail at some point of time for some of his perfidies. And she says that this person, this dacoit Amjad, who used to come and give her fruits at various points of time, and Sharad, meaning Swami Saradananda, first General Secretary of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission, saintly person, he says, they are equally my sons. Equally. This practical manifestation of Daya, equality, Samadarshitva, same-sightedness, no condition based on organized religion, no conditions imposed based on how noble the person is, how good or bad the person is. This unconditionality is the quintessence of what truly is called love. Not some emotional outpouring with which we are apt to confuse it. Somebody goes and embraces another person and starts weeping. That's just some sentimentality. It's a very superficial aspect of our being. The deeper aspects, which are unconditional, not dependent on specific place of birth, specific organized religion in which one is born, specific race, creed, none of that. These conditionings, when they are removed, that which is left is called love. So, what is the practice of it? And Vivekananda in Karma Yoga has brought this out in pretty simple terms, and it forms the underlying principle by which we in this organization serve others. As you might know, this organization has monks from various world religions within the same organization. Yes? There are Hindu monks, there are Muslim monks, there are Christian monks, there are Jewish monks, there are Buddhist monks, there are Jain monks. People from basically all major world religions come along. You see, the point is that these major world religions are just some condition of one's birth. It's not a choice one has made. The choice here is how one leads one's life. That is in one's own hands to some extent. And it is that choice that basically allows people from, independent of where they were born, what conditions they were born in, to come along together as a single monastic community. One. This is in terms of the monastic community that forms the core of the people who are largely involved in the service activities of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission. Ramakrishna Mission primarily. This is one aspect. That means those who are agents in some sense. What about those we serve? There's a hospital just opposite this particular place where we are discussing this particular lecture. People who come in, nobody asks them what particular religion they subscribe to. Why? Because that's irrelevant. A person needs treatment in a hospital, that is given. This simple way of handling things, what does it do? In simple practical terms, it removes from our minds these irrelevant and rather superficial conditionings that come from birth, from various dogmas and creeds and theologies and stories that we are apt to tell ourselves. This way of service allows us, and this is not something that's specific to the Ramakrishna mission. It allows, any one of you can do this in your life. Yeah? If there's some service that is to be rendered to a person, ask yourself, do I regard this person as belonging to a particular race? Do I regard this person as belonging to a particular religion before serving that person? Or is it completely irrelevant to my activity? And the less the relevance of these superficial factors, irrelevant factors, the more one is moving towards a certain universality of feeling, and that universality is basically the quintessence of what we ought to call love. Not the confused emotional outpouring that forces us to focus it on particular individuals and deprive others from the same thing. So I think with this little bit, we have probably discussed this particular paragraph of Maya and Freedom to a great extent. The next one, at this stage, he is coming to a rather different aspect of Maya. I'll read this out, and in the little bit of time remaining, we'll try to say something about this. We are all like this in the world. A legend tells how once Narada said to Krishna, "Lord, show me Maya." A few days passed, and Krishna asked Narada to make a trip with him towards a desert, and after walking for several miles, Krishna said, "Narada, I am thirsty. Can you fetch some water for me?" "I will go at once, sir, and get you water." So Narada went. At a little distance there was a village. He entered the village in search of water and knocked at a door, which was opened by a most beautiful young girl. At the sight of her, he immediately forgot that his master was waiting for water, perhaps dying for the want of it. He forgot everything and began to talk with the girl. All that day, he did not return to his master. The next day, he was again at the house talking to the girl. That talk ripened into love. He asked the father for the daughter, and they were married and lived there and had children. Thus 12 years passed. His father-in-law died. He inherited his property. He lived, as he seemed to think, a very happy life with his wife and children, his fields and his cattle, and so forth. Then came a flood. One night, the river rose until it overflowed its banks and flooded the whole village. Houses fell, men and animals were swept away and drowned, and everything was floating in the rush of the stream. Narada had to escape. With one hand he held his wife, and with the other two of his children. Another child was on his shoulders, and he was trying to ford this tremendous flood. After a few steps, he found the current was too strong, and the child on his shoulders fell and was borne away. A cry of despair came from Narada. In trying to save that child, he lost his grasp upon one of the others, and it was also lost. At last, his wife, whom he clasped with all his might, was torn away by the current, and he was thrown on the bank, weeping and wailing in bitter lamentation. Behind him, there came a gentle voice. "My child, where is the water? You went to fetch a pitcher of water, and I am waiting for you. You have been gone for quite half an hour." "Half an hour?" Narada exclaimed. 12 whole years had passed through his mind, and all these scenes had happened in half an hour. And this is Maya. This particular story, I mean, of course, like all mythological stories, it's figurative. And I think the worst thing one can do is take these things literally. However, if we try to understand the content, then there are things that we can derive from them. One, the world draws our attention, and our center of gravity shifts from that aspect of us which is conscious to that aspect which is mechanical. I think we were discussing biological evolution and the way it feeds into these emotions. See, if the mother, reflecting on the previous paragraph again, did not nurture her children, then the species would not be able to survive. It is this larger aspect of propagation of species, which is a large universal natural phenomenon that is performed by the nurturing that a mother does to the child. It is something that nature gets, it's nature getting its way through the intervention of certain individuals. And this general principle is what allows species to propagate. The problem arises when we become objects of this natural handling and cannot free ourselves from our evolutionary past. As I said, the forebrain has equipped us to free ourselves of these aspects of this remainder of evolution by exercising our minds, our analytical skills, and developing towards love as opposed to attachment, developing towards a certain universality as opposed to specific objects of affection. This is one thing that we need to bear in mind. Most of the time, nature gets its jobs done through us, and we think we are doing these things. It's only, had those sentiments not been there, had we not thought we are doing this, we are doing that, then most of the time we would not be seeking particular kinds of satisfaction and the job would not get done. Well, yes, this is all very relevant, all very useful at a certain lesser practical level, but unless we move back from this, see the performance of this work as something that is happening through us, rather than this strong notion of agentship that we carry around with ourselves, till we move back a little bit. This moving back is exactly what is called detachment. Till we move back, we will not be able to sense what is the real content in this lecture, unless we actually do this empirical practice of stepping back and allowing our feelings to develop in this universal way, our thoughts to develop in a certain universal way. We will not be able to make sense of what freedom even means. Why? Because we are conditioned. In particular, we are conditioned by our biological evolution. Can we decondition ourselves? This is the point that is being raised. One. Second thing in this particular story of Narada is this deep fondnesses, which we typically call love in our day-to-day usage, misusage, so to speak. These deep attachments that we develop, and then once those things are taken away, as in the case of Narada, his whole family, his wife, his children, taken away by a flood, by nature. It brings, there's some place where he says, weeping and wailing in bitter lamentation. This is a manifestation of extreme pain, agony. It's a common experience. I mean, there's nothing to feel superior or it's something that's common to all of us. Nature getting its way done through us. And then when we lose something that we value, there's this pain. And then Vivekananda says that it is as if this whole 12 years of experience had passed through his mind in half an hour. What does it mean? It means that these things take time to develop. This attachment takes time to develop. But if we keep our sword of discrimination strong and alert, keep our mind on the conscious aspect of experience, then slowly the sense of detachment gets cultivated better and better, and we are able to understand the difference between what we usually call love and what is mostly intermixed with attachment, and that which is free and loving. Yeah? So one more thing that is there, which I'll bring up again in the next class, is this passage of time. It seemed to him that 12 years had passed by. This is a different aspect. It seemed to him that 12 years had passed by. On the other, but in reality, so to speak, as far as this story is concerned, only half an hour had passed. Is there some part of our day-to-day experience which this reminds us of? A substantial part of a lifetime passing when in fact a short time has passed. And I think that these things would not make sense to us unless they were related to our day-to-day experience. That's the raw material. That's the place where we draw our experimental data from. And I think this wonderful state called dream is an instance where many things happen to us, and then we wake up and we think only half an hour has passed. With this thought, I conclude our discussion class today, and we'll take it up at exactly this point: dream versus this notion of passage of time, the subjective notion of time. Yeah? This is the point at which we hope to return next time. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.